Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. All right, guys, welcome back. I love the line. I'm joined by Frankie Hart, by the way. I love the line. Frankie wants everyone to know that yoga is not just made for stretchy people. Frankie, welcome back to the show. So nice to see you.
Thank you, Casey. Great to be back with you.
So, what are stretchy people? I'm thinking of like Stretch Armstrong,
Right. Stretchy people are people that you look at and you say, oh my gosh, they're twisting themselves up in a pretzel. They look like a pretzel. They look like a Gumby. Oh my God, I would break my body. I would be in the ER if I did that pose.
Okay. All right.
Not
I'm
a
sure.
stretchy person.
All right. I got you. Now, can you tell us, just to start, in case people are new to your program, can you tell us a little bit about the business that you run, that you are so passionate about? And let me give you the floor just to bring everyone back in, kind of a refresher before we get into today's topics.
Beautiful, Casey. So my name is Frankie Hart, and I'm the owner and creator of Satya Life Yoga, which is a yoga center in downtown Lakeland, Florida. We offer yoga classes for everyone, many types of yoga, from therapeutic essentials yoga for people who are really wanting to look at alignment and eliminate pain in the body, regain strength, and move forward in a very paced way. Also, we go from beginner levels to intermediate advanced levels. I teach aerial yoga, yoga bar, and I also have a long-standing practice and history of teaching the practices of Tai Chi and Qigong. These are very dear practices to me. I've spent 2 trips to China to study with my teacher. And also we went to Tibet with a group from the studio one year, which was extraordinarily special. And these classes are now, as a blessing from the pandemic, available to people all over the world through the hybrid format of the Zoom classes.
That's awesome. And one thing that you said is that you want to tell us about the concept that your body is not set in stone, even though at times it might feel like it is. I think everyone can relate to that. But
Yes.
I think that's a great thought and a great point for me to ask you if you can expand on that, because I really am interested in this topic.
Excellent. Yeah, I was thinking you would be, Casey.
Yeah, totally.
So we have these ideas of who we are, right? We have ideas of what our body looks like. We have our ideas of what our body feels like, and we have ideas of how our body moves. These ideas are, of course, built on our history. If we were very athletic as children and have been blessed to not have any injuries, we move into adulthood and even later life with a real feeling of sense and freedom in the body and a kind of sense of adventure. If we have a history of illness or injury, maybe even as a child we had that, we might feel that our body is fragile, right? If we are a strong person and we've practiced things like maybe football or weightlifting, we might have the idea that our body is very strong, but it's not very flexible.
Mm-hmm.
If we were like a gymnast maybe, or who's not longer practicing, or maybe a dancer who's no longer dancing, you might have retained your flexibility, but have lost some of your strength. Also, as people age, if they're not moving through their midlife, say they have a corporate job and they've lost a lot of muscle tone, then as they age, especially women as they go through menopause, they lose a lot of muscle mass. And that loss of muscle mass for both men and women creates a lot of instability and precariousness in their balance, in their joints, and in their confidence in moving forward. What I want everybody out there to think about, regardless of what stage they are at, is my body is not set in stone. So if I like how I feel in my body and I like the way my body is moving, well, great, keep going. But if there are areas of my body that I want to strengthen, or areas I want to have more mobility, or areas that I want to have more balance, if I want to change the size or shape of my body, all of this is possible through a dedicated practice.
I see. And the one thing I guess I wanted to ask you is, um, what as people get older, is
Mhm.
it the flexibility that usually goes first, or is it the muscle mass, or is everyone different? And I was wondering if you could tell us some tips to do just the
Yes.
little that we can to keep what we got.
To keep what we got. I like that. And Casey, let's start there. Like, let's start with we want to keep what we got, but let's go further. Let's develop. Let's develop strength. Let's develop mobility. I've worked with students in their 90s, like from their mid 80s to mid 90s, who got stronger and flexible in that 10 years,
Nice.
right? And the only reason I haven't still worked with this particular woman I'm thinking about is because since the pandemic, she's no longer traveling.
Right.
Uh, so it is possible. And I remember when I was doing that, I was so grateful to have her as a student because she in particular, when I first started working with her, she was unstable. She would need my help in the middle of the floor, in the middle of the studio.
Yeah.
So I'd bring props or a ballet bar or things like that to stabilize her. Then a couple years later, she would just need me to every now and then help her if she was doing a balance. And uh, by 95, she didn't need me at all.
Wow.
And I would always be like, "Hey, Jean, what are you doing there? I'm losing my job here." So she, and this is part of it, Casey, she had an open mindset. She came, she didn't say she can't do it, right? That's one thing. A lot of times people say, I can't do yoga now because this or that, right? So you and I talked a couple weeks ago
Yeah.
how I broke my toe, right? And
Right. And how
so
is that toe, by the way?
it's doing great. It's
Okay.
doing great. It's probably about 2 weeks from full jumping, but I've been doing little baby jumps
I
now.
bet. I bet.
And the fun thing is, like I was saying before, is, you know, if I didn't know what I know, maybe I would say, oh, I broke my toe. I can't do any practices now. For the next 6 weeks, I've just got to watch Netflix.
Yeah.
But that's not the truth. The truth of the matter is, can I intelligently start to move my body? So to answer your question, I think it goes a couple ways. One is, what have I been doing the last 10 years? So if I have maybe even been a college athlete, but now say the last 10 or 20 or even 30 years, I've been a desk jockey in a corporate job, right? I, chances are, am losing both some strength and some flexibility, right?
Hmm.
But then what do I do on the weekends? Do I, in the evenings, do I lift weights? And on the weekends, I cycle. So now my body is forming in that way. So, but I never stretch really very much. And I don't do counter things. I don't do pulling strength. I just do pushing strength kind of activities, things like that.
Hmm.
So my body is going to take on that. I really want people to think of that their body is this beautiful art form. It's a sculpture of uh, design showing you what you've been doing the last 10, 15 years, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point.
So
And,
this, oh, sorry, I was going to
please, no,
say,
please.
Casey, so the woman I was talking about, in her mid 90s, she had incredibly flexible hamstrings. And I asked her one day, I said, hey, how is it you have such open hamstrings? She could really lift her leg very high. She didn't have the strength at 95 to lift it very high without support, but with a bar or a chair, she could put her foot easily and balance. And she said, oh, when I go down to do my laundry, there's a railing and I throw my leg up on that railing every time.
Oh, wow.
There it is, right?
Yeah.
She is practicing. So this is a practice. And if we don't balance is a language. I like to say you might have studied Spanish in high school, but you didn't speak Spanish for the last 20 years.
Right.
Your Spanish is not going to be so good, right?
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
similarly, and so I think, Casey, there's a little bit of everything. But there is a science to, at least, when for women, when the hormones are changing, and men as well, that we do lose some muscle mass. Or for men, if they're losing some testosterone, they might be losing muscle mass, for women as well. And the thing is, for a lot of women, that can happen kind of suddenly, especially if they have a sudden onset into menopause.
Wow.
And it's so beautiful to just be conscious about that, and to start to work with your body in an intelligent way, because you can regain that muscle mass and bone density.
Nice. Well, that's definitely encouraging for people. Um, so now we were talking a little bit about the imbalances in our body, creating all this tightness, and like your 95-year-old friend had these open hamstrings, really had a great great flexibility, but a lot of
Mhm.
us uh tend to stiffen up, and I assume that's where like a lot of back pain and stuff like that
Yes.
comes from. So
Yes.
in those tight areas, um how should is yoga the answer strictly to address those issues, or do you have to do more than yoga, or can yoga just do it working with you?
That's a great question. So, you might remember, Casey, a long time ago in one of our early podcasts, we talked about the 8 limbs of yoga. This is when we understand the 8 limbs, we understand the depth of the practice. And then the answer, when I say, yes, yoga can do this for you, or Qigong, the large umbrella of Qigong practices, which are movement,
Because there's
healing,
movement.
and meditation, movement, yes, breath work. These are expansive practices. In the beginning, people might just understand one aspect of it. Maybe they've seen a few stretches and they say that's yoga, or they've seen a Tai Chi practice and that's Tai Chi. But the practices are expansive and deep. And so, if you are a devoted practitioner of either of them, yes, you can develop both strength, balance, flexibility, quietness, peace of mind, and perhaps most important but most subtle is a healthy flow of energy through your body.
Mm, I see. And now, when I was you talked about it before, about the athlete that may be in a sedentary job,
Mhm.
or I thought you put it very well when you look at somebody, say your body's a reflection of what you've been doing for the past 10 years.
Mhm.
So I guess what I would like to know is, how do we avoid, because but then again, then you said on the weekends, if you're a cyclist or if you're lifting weights, but we're kind of not doing it all encompassing. So we need to work with you. Like I'm saying, where these imbalances come from.
Beautiful. Beautiful. That's really what I want to talk about
Yeah.
today, Casey. So, um, first, I love this question, because when you are looking at your own body, it's the hardest, right? You can't see yourself as well as you can see another person very often, even for myself, right? It's always easier to see the full 360 of someone else. And you're also not lost in your own habits and delusions a little bit,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
You're a
yeah,
little
yeah.
more open when you're looking at somebody else. You can be a little more objective, right?
Yes, yes.
So we all do well with a teacher, because a teacher guides us this way, and helps us understand. So when I work with a student, the first thing I want to do is always I look at the student's body individually. So that's why when you asked the earlier question, I can't say this is going to happen or that's going to happen, because what has this individual been doing, and where did they start from? And also, what is their goal? Where do they want to be going? Because who we are is what we've been doing, but what we've been doing hopefully is in line with where we want to be going, right?
Yeah, I can.
Right. So if we've set our compass to our heart's desire, right? Say my heart's desire is I want to play pro tennis. but maybe I did that, or maybe I didn't do that. Life went a different way, but now my heart's desires, I want to be able to play tennis until I'm 80, 90 years old. I want to keep that going, right? So that is shining a light for me also as I'm working with my students. Where do they want to be? I notice their postural habits, because the foundational building blocks of all movement is, how am I standing? How am I sitting? How am I walking? They often tease me because I watch them walk in the room. I watch them walking from the parking lot. I watch them walking back into the parking lot. They say, I know you were watching me.
Yeah, right.
You know, what are we moving like when we're not on good behavior, right? When
Yeah,
somebody, we don't think anybody is watching, right?
yeah.
And then I use the poses or the Tai Chi forms as what I like to say is my MRI machine. So where is this person tight in their body? Where are they strong? Do they have a torquing, a spiraling pattern that's come in? Is there a scoliosis skeletally or just muscularly from their behaviors? And then I want to know what they love, because we want to grow and move towards that. I remember when I was in my early 20s, I had gotten a trainer to do some weight training, and I was dancing, and this guy came in the room, and he was 12 inches taller than I was at least, and about three of me.
Right,
And
okay.
really ripped, just
Yeah.
totally strong, amazing, right?
Uh-huh.
And I took one look at him and he said, well, what do you want to do, Frankie? And I said, well, I can't end up looking like you.
Yeah, that's not gonna work for me.
It's not going to work. I've got to be able to do the things on stage I need to do.
Right,
And he laughed. Oh my gosh, Casey, he just laughed and laughed and laughed. He said, Frankie, don't worry, it's not going to happen.
right.
But even that short, fun dialogue, letting him understand, I want to develop long, lean muscle strength, right?
Mhm.
Other people might want to, pack on a lot of body weight. So I want to, when I'm working with a student, support them in their dream and their vision. So if we go into this a little bit, like I sort of heard of a little bit of well, how do I get ahead if I'm working all the time and then I'm cycling and I'm lifting
Right.
weights and I'm trying to get ahead? How do I get this balance? Well, here's an indication. One of my yoga students, who's a big power lifter, he came into his class one time and he was telling me before class, he's like, oh, Frankie, and he was like wanting to get a big, attaboy from me. He's like, yeah,
Uh-huh.
I did 100 planks yesterday. And I looked at him and I said, oh, that's nice. And I said, how many back bends did you do? Because 100 planks is doing 100 of what's in his comfort zone. It's
Yeah.
a lot of pushing strength, and it's using his body in all of the ways that he's already training. Yes. So
Mhm.
in my work with him now over these years, and now he's doing beautiful back bends, is how can I open the pectoral muscles so they're not just strong in a shortened way, but that they have power when they're opened? How do I rebalance the shoulder? So if all of my pushing is always this way, what happens? Where's my strength when I have my arm overhead and I want to push up? You see?
Right, yeah.
So that's an idea. Or the one I know very well is from dancers, right? So dancers come to yoga classes and they just want to do all these seated poses, seated forward bends with their legs spread way out wide, and they're just in bliss. This is what they love,
Mhm.
because their hamstrings are loose, their adductors are loose. So with that group, I want to say, let's look, what kind of hamstring strength do you have? Can you access your internal rotators, right? Because external rotators that are over tight, and this is an example I want to give us for today, because it's not just for dancers, it's throughout our whole population. External rotators that are tight and weak create hip pain, low back pain, and knee pain. And
Wow.
often this goes undiagnosed for a long time, and we're kind of chasing the pain and not realizing that we have to be able to turn off a chronically held external rotator or chronically held hip. External rotation is just to turn the leg out like a ballet dancer.
Mhm.
And when we're sitting, our external rotators are often getting weak. So weakness and tightness together is that deadly perfect storm
Yeah.
for potential injury. Um, my image is for like this, Casey. So whether we look at the plank analogy, right? Plank versus back bend,
Uh,
or, internal external rotation, you could think of it as a tug of war, but in a happy way, a yin yang balance in your
okay.
body, this counterbalancing strength. If we're healthy, we have counterbalancing strength in the two sides. And what happens is our set point, the middle, is where we default to, right?
Mhm.
But if my balance is always, I'm always training my body one way, that set point, right? One guy on the tug of rope, he's always training. The other guy's always sleeping.
Right.
So that set point leaves the middle and starts going towards
Good
the
point.
big guy, right?
Yeah.
So what does the body do? Because the body is so smart. The body says, oh my goodness, we're going to fall over there. This guy on the other side, he's been sleeping on the job. So I'm going to recruit my friends. So these are called compensation patterns. So I'm going to recruit all these other muscles to help pull me back up to the center, which, of course, our brain doesn't know, our conscious mind doesn't even know this is happening,
Right.
right? But underneath behind the scenes, under the surface,
Yeah,
our
yeah, yeah.
body's rebalancing us. And then next thing you know, you're like, oh, my neck hurts, or oh, that hip hurts, or oh, my lower back, because these other muscles are not designed by nature to do those actions.
See.
That is why asymmetries, like if I'm a violin player, if I'm a golfer, if I'm a baseball player, if I'm a mom with three kids and I always, three little ones, and I always hold that kid on the same hip, right?
Mhm.
In the beginning, those things feel good. But year after year after year, doing those patterns in an asymmetrical way creates imbalance. And then from that imbalance, we are having to create compensation patterns to neutralize ourselves. With this practice of yoga, the way I work with yoga or Tai Chi, my Tai Chi students, is I'm trying to uncoil, unravel those compensation patterns so we can get to the core issue. And then we want to strengthen what's weak and stretch what's tight. And I'll tell you, Casey, it's everything the student doesn't want to do.
Yeah,
In
but
other words, if
yeah.
left to themselves, they would be doing the planks versus the
Right,
back
right,
bends,
because
right?
that's what they're good at, and they know about that, and it's
Yes,
their comfort zone, like you said. Yeah, I get
yes.
it.
And I get it too. And that's what I love about teaching is I can say, I've been there. And in my own way, I'm still there. We're always still there. Like we want to kick up into our handstand leading with our right foot, not our left foot, because we're better on the right foot. But you do that the first year, okay. But 10 years later, you're always leading with that same foot. You're creating another imbalance.
Right.
And so the yoga as a discipline is so it's so vast, Casey. I mean, after studying it for over 30 years, I'm always learning more. I'm always expanding what I can offer my students because it it's a science as well as a movement form. Yeah,
Yeah, no doubt. Guys, Frankie Hart, amazing guest. Frankie, let me give you the last word. I'm sorry I didn't get to the people who wrote in, but I will. Anything you want to leave us with? Great show, great information. But if you can just give us the last word and then where we can get a hold of you. Always,
absolutely.
always great show,
Thank
Frankie. You're very, you had so much information. It's really, really cool.
thank you, Casey. All right. So my last word I want to leave you with, perhaps where these practices of yoga and Tai Chi Qigong are a little different from other modalities, and that is the breath and the mind. So if I'm practicing yoga or Tai Chi, the mind is part of it. I want to understand that if I'm too young, I'm using too much force. I'm frustrated. I'm impatient. I've got to fix my body. I got to change my body yesterday. When is this going to happen? Right? The body doesn't do well with that. You end up going the wrong way on the highway because you end up injuring yourself. Right? So we start to understand that this is yin yang balance in Tai Chi and yoga is called Sukha and Stihira. To yin, I feel defeated. Like I believe, Casey, that there is no person on the planet who popped into this earth and in their lifetime and said, I want to be a couch potato. I don't think there's a single person. I really don't, because look at a little puppy, look at a little kitten. They want to run around. They want to
Yeah.
jump and run and play. I think that's our nature. But if we, for any reason, feel defeated inside, right? that can start to happen. Then I am too yin. I don't have enough of this energy, right? So what we want to do is find ways, and this is where a teacher can help you again, to begin. What is enough? Not too much, but just enough. And I often say for people out there, if you find that is your nature, to be very yin right now, to feel defeated with your body, please start so gently. A small walk every day, something simple like that. Simply lying down, observing your breath. Become friendly, become at home in your body again. The sky's the limit, but you've got to inhabit your body. And it is a safe and wonderful place to be.
Awesome. Frankie, how do people get a hold of you?
863-802-9642 is our phone number. And you can always text or email us as well. info@satyalife.com, SATYA life.com. And our website is satyalife.com.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.